Hello, everyone. Kerry here from Homestead How and the Carnivore Diet movie. I'm honored to have Dr. Shawn Baker join us here today. Thank you for being here, Dr. Baker. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, likewise, giving me the opportunity to chat with your audience, and I appreciate just getting to chat. So thanks.
Nice. Dr. Baker, for those who maybe are not familiar with you, would you mind maybe sharing your background and expertise?
Yeah, well, I mean, my official background, I'm conventionally trained physician. I'm an MD. I spent about 2 decades practicing as a surgeon, as an orthopedic surgeon. I was doing hips and knee replacements and trauma and all that stuff, and then you got the Carnivore Diet movie. I'm the guy that actually came up with the name and then sort of came up with I wouldn't say I invented the carnivore diet, but I called it that. I was the first guy to call it the carnivore diet, and it's taken off. For whatever reason, that name has stuck. There were people doing all meat diets for many, many years prior to me doing this. But, so that's kind of my thing. I'm probably one of the world's leading advocates for this style of eating, I suppose. I'm also probably maybe one of the least zealot like. There's a lot of things I don't know, and I'm not all that super sort of adamant about certain things. I think we're still learning a lot of things, but yeah, I mean, but to suffice it to say, I'm very much an advocate for a carnivore style of eating for sure.
And how long have you been eating carnivore for?
So I am about to enter my 8th year. So I subsequent, previous to that, I spent, I don't know, 3-ish years doing a ketogenic diet. And then before that, I was on kind of a low carb paleo diet. So I've been sort of low carb now for probably, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years now, something like that. But yeah, carnivore, and fairly strict carnivore for, roughly about 8 years.
Yeah, I mentioned this on the 24-hour live stream. I really have been enjoying your book. Just your background is just crazy. All the things you did leading up until this point. Um, I guess one of the biggest things you mentioned, you wrote the book Carnivore Diet. You came up with the name Carnivore Diet, and then I guess the other really huge thing was you were on the Joe Rogan Experience talking about carnivore diet, which had just this crazy sort of ripple effect. I think we're still feeling it now. I don't know how many people I know that I talked to that heard about carnivore from you or from Joe Rogan Experience. What was all of that like for you?
Well, it was, and at the time, the carnivore diet didn't exist at that time. It wasn't called that. I was just on this all meat, zero carb diet, as people like to call it back then. And this is before I'd even written the book, or so I wrote the book after Rogan had me on, and I didn't really even sort of have a good, handle on how sort of influential Joe Rogan was at the time, and even more so now. He's even gotten more popular since I was on in 2017. But he just kind of said, "Hey man, would you like to come on and do the talk about your diet?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not? That sounds like fun." I didn't really go in there with plans to have a formal scientific presentation. I thought it was just just chat, and so that's what I did. And we did that on. It was kind of funny. I remember it was on December 7th of 2017 because he gave me some dates. He said, "Hey, these are some dates," and I said, "Well, let's do Pearl Harbor Day, which is December 7th, for those who don't remember, the day that's supposed to live in infamy." We're supposed to never forget it. And it was kind of funny. He goes, it was kind of funny because he was like, "Which day is Pearl Harbor Day?" And I said, "Man, December 7th." Of course, I'm in the military, so I know that, I'm kind of, this is more my sort of thing. So we did that, and he was super nice about it. He obviously was skeptical. You could tell, I could tell when, he was sitting across from me going, "Man, this dude's crazy." It's just like, and as many people know, he ended up eventually doing the diet and found out the same thing I found out, that it works. And, there's, it was just kind of funny to see him a couple of years later. I think it was like 3 years later after I was on the show that he finally decided to do it. And now he kind of does it periodically. He's off and on, and he basically eats mostly meat now, which I think a lot of people that do this diet, and I don't use it as this is the way you got to live for the rest of your life, and how dare you ever eat a blueberry. I never say that. I never say that everybody should do it, or it's the only diet for people, or there's no other way to get healthy. You'll never hear me saying that. But what I do think is that it is a wonderful tool. It is an incredibly powerful intervention that you can do to literally in many cases reverse diseases, cure disease, whatever language you want to use, because I've seen it happen over and over again. And so, and as we're trying to get more and more research done on this topic, I've been advocating for that and pushing for that, and was able to help with some of these several studies that have been published. I've been able to sort of help with that. So yeah, I mean, it was a good experience. I mean, in general, I mean, it was obviously, now you got a lot of people looking at you, where you didn't before.
Right.
And I had a lot of obviously negative pushback too. We had a lot of the, sort of the vegan folks that are ideologically opposed to eating meat, and they're, oh my God, you're the worst person on the planet. And then I've gotten, obviously people that, even if they're not vegan, they're very much against, a carnivore diet, because, oh my God, red meat's going to kill you, and you have to have fiber in your diet. And, all the research shows this is true. And how dare you go against this? So you got the people that are, obviously the ideologically people, the vegans that are emotionally opposed to it. You've got people that, are heavily invested in, certain scientific sort of beliefs, which really haven't been tested in my view satisfactory, because we're seeing so much. If the science were as it were supposed to be, if we were supposed to trust the science, follow the science, and believe the science, then none of us would have gotten healthier. I mean, I think you're another person, myself, and I can, we can literally point to many, many thousands. None of that should have happened if the science were to be unquestioned. And it's a good thing that we are questioning it, because we're learning a lot. We're learning a lot about, nutrition, learning a lot about health, learning a lot about diet, challenging certain deeply held beliefs, which I think need to be challenged. I think, like I said, I'm not going to be one to say that this is the only way. And I think you should be skeptical of what I say, skeptical of what everybody says, and test it out and see what happens. So that's kind of what I kind of look at. I look at results. I'm like, and what are the results? Show me your results. If you don't have good results, then maybe you're not doing the right thing.
Right. What was it like in the days just after Joe Rogan? Because I imagine it was probably kind of surprising for you.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of podcast requests. I mean, it was just like all of a sudden, email, hey, can you come on this show? It's a lot of people wanted to talk to me, and obviously, social media has become such a huge tool these days. For good or bad. There's a lot of bad things about social media. There's a lot of good things about it as well. And so I had a relatively small. I think the only thing I was on at that time was Twitter, and I think I had maybe, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 people, at the time, and that quickly went up quite a bit higher. And, so that was interesting, and it was just interesting watching the reaction people had about, it's always interesting to see people have an opinion on something that they don't really have a lot of insight onto, like, who I am, what I stand for, what I say, what I don't say. I hear a lot of people telling me stuff that I've never said. That's always kind of interesting to say, or trying to, sort of, so attribute things to me that aren't for me. That it's interesting to see that.
Yeah. I'm so glad you got out there and started this and put the word out, because it's changed my life forever, like drastically. I'm down 100 pounds since my heaviest, and that's what everyone always looks at. But it's all of the other things. That's why I'm interested in learning more about Rivero. We talked about it briefly the other day, but I'm almost embarrassed to show this. I can't remember if I showed this the last time we spoke, but these are all of the pills I was on
Yeah.
before.
No, I don't think I see. It looks like he has a pretty good stack of those there. Yeah.
I'm embarrassed in retrospect, because now I'm like, man, it was so foolish. Like everything seems clear now that I've been doing carnivore. I just hit 6 months on carnivore, and every single one of those things that I needed pills for, it's completely reversed, and I don't need them anymore. I had pills in there for sleep. They thought I had gout. That's completely gone. It was just it was horrible inflammation. I had inflammation in my back, and I had acid reflux. That's gone. I had pills for sleep. Depression and anxiety was the worst one. The whole carnivore diet movie that I've been working on, I'm pretty passionate about. That all stemmed from, I was just so hopeless for many years. I was on every SSRI antidepressant, and nothing did anything for me. And on carnivore diet, it's completely gone. And it's not just me. It's just, I've been hearing so many other stories from other people reversing depression and anxiety, when I've literally tried every SSRI antidepressant out there. Nothing touched it for me. It made me feel more like a zombie. uh, manageable. Like I wasn't suicidally depressed anymore. But nothing did it for me like carnivore. And it's not even that I'm not depressed anymore on carnivore. My mood is just completely shifted around. So it's pretty amazing. I You have to have so many testimonials or stories or things like that that you've heard over the years. Or what are some kind of remarkable ones that stand out for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, before I go into that, I mean, I think first of all, it's just incredible that we have so many people that are so sick with so many diseases, you know, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's gastrointestinal issues, whether it's arthritis or skin issues or whatever. I mean, we've got an entire majority right now of the population that is needing these medications. It's like, how can that be possibly normal? I mean, there's no other species on the planet that has that. So we're obviously doing something very, very, very wrong, you know, to have that little level of prevalence of sickness in across the board, with nearly, you know, every part of the planet, just about. So it's clearly, in my view, it's highly related to food. There's other things that go into that, but food is probably the big one. Um, but yeah, I mean, and I've seen, gosh, I mean, just at our website, you know, rivero.com or carnivore.diet, which you can also link to, we've got literally 1,000 interviews like this recorded. I mean, that's a massive amount of stuff of people who've gotten healthier, and we've cataloged them by, you know, you just type in, you go to carnivore.diet, go to the success stories page and just type in whatever condition you're interested in: depression, anxiety, endometriosis, diabetes, arthritis. You'll find, you know, literally dozens, if not hundreds of success stories. But some of the ones, you know, that stick out. I mean, obviously, you know, you see these people that lose enormous amounts of weight, 100 pounds, 200 pounds. I heard of a lady that lost 500 pounds. 500 pounds. You know, it's like,
Wow.
first of all, how do you, you know, it's amazing that you have somebody that could lose 500 pounds, but nonetheless, you got people that are doing that. So, I mean, there's just enormous weight loss things. You know, when I first started doing it, you know, because, you know, ketogenic diets have been around, low carb diets have been around. So it wasn't a surprise that people were losing weight. It wasn't surprising that people were seeing improvements in diabetic reversals. And of course, we see those all the time. In fact, probably even more so than a lot of even some of the low carb diets. Um, but you know, when I started seeing, you know, the mental health issues, you know, like people that were depressed, they're suicidally depressed. They were on multiple SSRIs and mood stabilizing drugs and, you know, lithium and all these different things that they were able to get rid of, which I thought was really, really shocking, amazing, and also wonderful. I started seeing people with various types of addiction, alcoholics, you know, people that were addicted to drugs, people that were, you know, obviously food addiction is another one a lot of people don't seem to recognize, but it certainly is a problem. So all these addictive type things going away. And then I started to see some really weird stuff that I was like, you know, I mean, all the autoimmune things, the gut issues, which makes sense. You know, you think about it, why, how, it's to me, it's shocking that there are many, many physicians, including gastroenterologists that specialize in the gut, that will say that the diet has no bearing on things like ulcerative colitis. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, this is knowing that I've seen people literally come off drugs and reverse that, you know, on a routine basis. It should be the front line. It should be the first line treatment. If somebody's early diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, the first thing you should do is put them on an elimination diet. That would be I mean, rather than, you know, because what happens is you don't do that, and then they get worse and they progress and they need more and more medications, and some of them go on to have surgery and have parts of their bowels resected, and their life is forever altered. But you know, things like, you know, some of the weird things one of the weirdest things I saw, what I thought, and I've seen it multiple times now, there's a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. It's a genetic disorder. So you're born with it, right? Your genetics show that you don't make collagen appropriately. And so you end up with really loose joints, loose skin. A lot of times your joints dislocate, or what we call sublux, which is a partial dislocation. And I remember having a gal, she's an ER physician working in Europe. And I was talking with her, and she had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she was like early mid 50s. And she would literally wake up every single day with 3, maybe 4 joints dislocated, like her shoulder dislocated, her wrist was dislocated, her ankle was dislocated. She'd have to start her day by putting her joints back in place. You can imagine how horrible that would be every day, waking up because she would toss and turn at night and things would dislocate. And then she would go to work in the ER and work as an ER physician. And probably every other shift, she would dislocate one of her joints and have to have somebody help her put it back in. And And she was developing arthritis because you can imagine all the trauma, the joints dislocating in and out all the time. And she had gained weight because she couldn't exercise because she was always just in pain. And she went carnivore. And within 1 month, she stopped having dislocations, has never dislocated since, which to me is just, I'm still trying to figure out why that would be, because it's like, this is a connective tissue disorder where the collagen is not formed properly. By going carnivore, it stabilized that, which I thought was amazing. And then she was able to start working out, go to the gym. She lost weight, feeling great. Yeah, that was interesting. I had a gal, remember a young gal, she was actually vegan because her parents were vegan and kind of forced her. And she was like this, I think she was 15, 16-year-old gal, real sweet girl. And she had begged her parents that she could maybe start eating some meat because she wanted to get stronger for track and field, right? And they grudgingly conceded that. But also, she had something called Tourette's syndrome. Tourette's syndrome, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's a neurological disorder where you have like these crazy outbursts of, you just utter profanities. You just kind of have these weird vocal tics and, these kind of really strange things. It's very socially, stigmatizing because, it's like, wow, you're kind of strange to be around. So she goes carnivore and her Tourette's syndrome resolved and went away completely. Again, this is one of these things, like, oh, the hell of a diet, you can't imagine it. So I've seen some really, really just amazing things and the things that I continue to see things, that just floor me. And, at this point, even some of these things what other people would be amazed by, I'm like, yeah, I saw that last week. It's just like this,
Right.
you see it so often now, it doesn't shock you as much as it was before, but it's truly, and the best thing is, people are getting their lives back, and it's just like, how rewarding is that? You get somebody who's, literally has a miserable existence. Some of them don't even want to live anymore. And all of a sudden they're like, I don't have this horrible disease anymore. And I can enjoy my life, enjoy my kids, and enjoy all these other things.
Right. That's one of the things. Oh, sure.
Sorry, I had a dog barking in the background. I wanted to close. My door wasn't quite closed all the way, so I closed it. So that should be better. So anyway,
no problem. Well, you touched on a few things. It's really interesting. I asked our YouTube members for some questions, and someone asked about Tourette's. So you answered that one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen a couple people now, like 2 or 3 people with Tourette's now that have done that. And Tourette's is not that common. It's not something you see every day, but but of the people that I've seen do carnivore, it seems to have helped. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And just yesterday, I interviewed a man. His name is Lee. He has a really good YouTube channel. He's Carnivore Kent. And he had a colitis. And what a horrible story. He had it so horribly. He was in the bathroom like 30 times a day at his worst, and ended up losing his colon. And he has an ostomy bag. And then he fell into just a deep depression and almost ended his life. And thankfully he found carnivore. He started doing it, was able to get out of the depression, and he's got such a remarkable story. Just the thing that you said too is, you have these people that are so hopeless. That's how I was, so hopeless. But it's not going from being hopeless to just living a regular life like myself and this guy Lee and other people I'm seeing. It's going from hopeless to being excited and passionate and like fired up and excited and having like a default sort of smile on your face. So this guy Lee went from horrible depression. Now he's just thriving. He's so fired up. But the really sad thing is I asked him, I was like, so Lee, if you would have found carnivore before, would you have lost your colon? And he said, no, I really don't think I would have. He's talked to so many people in the meantime that if he was doing carnivore at that time, he probably wouldn't have had all those symptoms he was having.
Yeah, that is the tragic part, because I've seen it over and over again. Just particularly with these inflammatory bowel disease, whether it's Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, I think a significant number, maybe not everybody, but a significant number of people would probably resolve the disease and not go on to have surgery, not have to lose body parts, not have to go on these crazy expensive biologics, all the attendant side effects that go with them. It's just, and you kind of, I'll just, if you don't mind, I expand. So Rivero, our company that is, a new digital health company, and our goal is basically that, to use lifestyle treatment, using various dietary, sometimes carnivore, sometimes other different versions, but we'll certainly not shy away from using carnivore, to do exactly that, to get these people fixed. And I think the part of the problem is, for a lot of people, in order to change, like you said, you were in a fairly low place, it takes a tremendous amount of pain before you're willing to change. And how do you get people to do that ahead of time so they don't do that? Or how do you convince people that they don't have to lose their colon before they're willing to change their diet? My gosh. So I mean, that's the thing with Rivero. Our goal is, and we've got physicians in all 50 states in the US on board, knowing that this is, the approach we use, so because a lot of physicians, and myself included, and now many more, there's hundreds, if not thousands of them now, have kind of grown fed up with the healthcare system, just as much as patients are tired of, here's another pill, it doesn't really work that well, it costs a lot of money, and here's another test, and here's another, because you cling to the next test. Oh, maybe this next test will be it. Maybe this next drug will help me, and it never does, or it rarely does. And it's very, very, and you go through, maybe decades like that. It's really sad. And many people, it's like, this is a thing, somebody is like, they've suffered for 20, 30 years. And they're like, you mean all I had to do is change my damn diet? I could have avoided. I mean, because, career, family, relationships, enjoyment in life, the things you can do, it's all lost. It's like, I literally lost a decade, 2 decades, 3 years, 3 decades of my life to illness, which I didn't need to. And no one told me that. So it's very frustrating. And, like I said, it's, and I applaud you for doing the movie, because, hopefully it gets good distribution and people can see this and just avoid all that unnecessary suffering. Because when I, and I'm kind of an older guy now, and you look at like, what do you want to contribute to the world as you leave? Because after a point, it's like, I've eaten all the food I want to eat. It's, I've done all the things I want to do. Now you're like, well, what can I do? What kind of legacy can you leave? And it's like, how can you, convince people that it's worth it? That's one thing, and it's so you don't have to go through all the suffering that happens. It's mostly avoidable, and that's a really sad thing. And some people, most people never figure it out, which is a really, really sad thing, because you figure out, if you didn't, I don't know how you came across doing this. It was probably some kind of luck. And you just kind of stumbled into it, and you've got people out there, and let's just say, for instance, instead of watching a carnivore movie, because there isn't any, right, you watch the latest vegan propaganda or whatever, Mediterranean diet propaganda, you did that thinking you're doing the right thing, and you never got the full resolution. You just stayed kind of sick, or you came across a carnivore thing, some guy saying, hey, do carnivore, and 25 other people says, no, that's crazy, don't do that. And you kind of just listen to the crowd, so anyway, hopefully we can change the narrative. So it's fun stuff.
Yeah. I found carnivore through Dante from Frigna Freedom, an individual YouTuber doing it. And I thought, this guy's absolutely insane. There's no way. And then his video was from 2 years ago. He's just starting to eat meat only. And then I realized it was 2 years ago. And then I watched the most recent video, and he completely transformed. And I was like, whoa, this is just something to this. And then thanks to you, Dr. Baker, and the other good doctors out there putting content out there, I never would have started myself, other than I watched videos from you and these other doctors putting out good information. Like, whoa, there's something to this thing. That's what led me to it. But the carnivore diet documentary I'm doing, I'm hoping to kind of what you were saying. Like, I'm not telling people, hey, you need to do carnivore. I just want to show the examples of people with all these different health conditions, many of which I had, depression, anxiety being one of the big ones, but stomach issues, heart disease, all those things. Just say, here's people doing it. This is the example. They're doing it for a year. Because I think those individual stories are what resonate with people. That's what caught my attention to do this. And I've seen for other people, one of the challenges though is I totally agree with you that the thing that's frustrating is they always say you got to have your why before doing carnivore. You got to get desperate enough to figure it out or do something. Fortunately, I kind of fell into it by watching a YouTube video. I think there's a lot of people out there that they're desperate, but they're just so confused at this point. It's sort of more of the, how do I do this? Because their whole life they've been told, you eat meat, you're going to clog your arteries. You got to eat your vegetables. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And so there's these people that are just kind of paralyzed with this confusion and fear. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how, do you have anything that you would say to people like that, that are, they're hopeless and they want to do something. They're just too scared. They're like a deer stuck in the headlights and it's just inaction.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just thinking about the breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and what is that breakfast for most people? It's cereal. So I think that's where that comes from. People are
Yeah.
got to eat something light, a light little breakfast of cereal, maybe some oatmeal or something like that. I think one of the things is if what is the guy, Dr. Phil? He always says, "How's that working out for you?" So if you're doing something that sucks and you're just not, whatever you've tried is not working, or you're just like, I'm going to double down on doing the stuff that hasn't worked for me. Think about that. Why couldn't you stick to it the first time? If calorie counting is the way to do it, and you've tried it before, why couldn't you do it before? Do you have some kind of personal failing that's preventing you from doing that? Or maybe that's not the best strategy. Maybe a better strategy would be eat better food. I mean, it's like, like I said, I know there's people talking about, it doesn't matter what you eat, as long as you eat within a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight, which is true. I mean, that is true in a way, but again, if you can't do it, you can't do it. Right. And most people can't do it. I can't do it. I mean, I can't sit there and, just, sort of drive down natural instinctual urges. I mean, there's only so far you can do that, without sort of mental health, defect. I think sometimes people that do these things tend to be kind of crazy, not all of them, some of them, though, I'll say. I know you get
Right.
feedback on that, but I mean, it's one of those things where, again, I say, try it. I think from my perspective, 3 months is a pretty good trial of carnivore, too little beyond that, and you're unlikely to maybe even transition properly. And then conversely, if you do it for 3 months or 6 months and you get no benefit, or you're worse, don't do it anymore. I mean, I don't care if people do that, how many people do this. I'm just like, this is a tool that you can utilize, and hopefully it'll work for you. Great. And I can show you, I can help you do it. And, others can too. And great. And hopefully it works like it does for many, many people, and get you off the med. Because really it's not so much, I really think that a lot of people have a messed up relationship with food. I mean, that's, anytime I do consultations with patients, they always ask, they say, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds, or I want to help with my thyroid condition or whatever. And I'm always like, look, the first thing you got to do is, eat for the right reasons, change your relationship. And it's, so it's not always necessarily what's going to make you lose weight the fastest, because that can be a disaster, and it often leads, well, I lost 20 pounds and, in 3 weeks, and 6 months later, I'm 40 pounds heavier. So that's not what you got to do. You got to fix this relationship, because we have, by design, really poor relationships with food. The whole entire snack food industry. I mean, the whole concept of eating continuously. I'm sure you just saw the recent report where dietitians are now being paid by the junk food industries to promote those products as, oh, a little bit once in a while won't hurt you. Don't deprive yourself. Have your snack once in a while. They're just kind of this subtle messaging, which is basically turning people into addicts, slowly making
Yeah.
people addicts. And it's really, I mean, my view is kind of, not kind of, it is unethical in my view. And so, you've got a lot of unraveling you got to do. You got a lot of unhypnotizing. You got a lot of, you're swimming up against a big current, and it's tough. It's challenging. That's one of the things I found. I wrote the book. I think it still stands up today. I think it's a good guide for I think really anybody doing this. But I think that even if you have the knowledge, I mean, how do you actually execute? Because the plan is not hard, but the execution is sometimes hard. And that's where I find things like having supportive environments so important. Get the family involved if you can. If you can't, get the family involved. Find a community, find a online community. Like today, we have those opportunities. That if your physician is not on board, it's hard, because it's like you're always, I did a survey on 12,000 people doing carnivore a few years ago, and we found out that people that have a supportive environment in the home, have a supportive environment at the physician's office, are much more likely to be successful, have a better chance of reversing diseases than those that don't have either of those, or both of those. So like I said, if you got antagonistic physician, or your family's giving you a hard time, or your coworkers, you're going to have a harder time. So that's one of the things, again, with Rivero, we have supportive physicians that are going to support people in this or whatever diet they end up doing. But I mean, knowing that nutrition has a huge role in medicine, and it's not just some sort of afterthought, like when I was taught. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, we never taught about it. In orthopedics, there's not a single. I mean, I don't know if there's three sentences on the entire textbook to talk about diet. I mean, it's like, we don't know about it. We don't care about it. Give me a hammer, give me a saw, boom,
Right.
whatever. Just, eat enough, or don't eat too much, or something like that. But it's just, it's a shame that we're there. And I think it's by design. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies basically write the medical school curriculums. They pay for them, they fund them. I think they provide at least 20% of the funding that goes to a medical school comes from pharmacy, and that goes into how we train people. And I was, as a brand new medical student, I was in there super excited because the drug reps gave me free pizza and gave me some pens and took me to, and then they would take you to conferences, and then, it's on and on. They just kind of suck you in. I mean, it's by design.
Right. Yeah. It's, I'm working with some pretty smart people for the Carnivore Diet documentary, and one of them said to me, if you get no other message across other than sharing the example with Carnivore, what would it be? And it's interesting because what it would be for me is kind of sounds like what the mission is with Rivero. It's most of the things that I ever went to the doctor for were nutrition, but they only threw medicine at me, and I didn't know any better. Like I should take ownership of it, and now it seems foolish after the fact, but almost every one of the things I had was just simply nutrition and not medicine. I guess that was kind of one question I had for you is I love what it sounds like what's happening with Rivera. I know you recently launched, you're still kind of in the early stages with things. Um, how how do you overcome that part that it seems like we have to educate people to the fact that I never knew that. It seems like common sense now, but I was like, my stomach hurts. I go to the doctor. I trust my doctor. They're going to help me. But I would go to the doctor and it would just be, here's a pill, and it never fixed my stomach. So there's so many people out there that I feel are kind of like me in that boat. You got something wrong, you go to the doctor, and the only answer they ever have is medication. And none of that ever worked for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something where you just have to kind of continue to show your results, put up the results. And like I said, I mean, obviously doing studies, and we've done, some have been done and more are on the way. But, I think that, when I first started doing this, I remember I had a website called meatheals.com. I remember, I don't know if you ever saw that one. And I started collecting these anecdotes because I knew as a physician, I could read a study and it's not that persuasive. Even if the study says this, most people viscerally don't understand it, doesn't internalize. But when you see somebody that looks just like you, I mean, effectively, they've got the same exact issues that you're going through, and they cure that. That's how marketing works anyway. I mean, everybody knows these before and after testimonials. Everybody does that why? Because it works. And the problem is, are they scamming you? And it is what they did with the intervention that made it work. I remember when I was a kid, the bodybuilders, I took my supplement, and no, you took a bunch of steroids. It was just like, but as a 14-year-old kid, I don't know that. So here I'm buying the extra protein powders and all this stuff. So, but it's something that you have to connect with people somehow. And I think most of us are kind of emotion based. Most of us are, we have a gut feeling sense of things. And, I think it's just going to be a lot of, sort of sharing the message over and over and over again. The dietary lexicon didn't even include the word carnivore 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, no one mentioned that, right? It was never even a thought. And now it's talked about fairly frequently, usually in negative terms, in the mainstream. It's usually, oh, these stupid carnivore diet's the worst diet ever, right? I mean, but at least it's getting awareness of that. And, we're in a time where a lot of people are, I guess, for good or bad, untrustworthy of government agencies and, kind of authority figures, because they feel like they've been let down in many ways. And so a lot of people are more inclined to like, hey, let me figure this out myself. And that can be a good thing. I mean, I think you need to take ownership. You have the most skin in the game. I mean, I don't care how nice your physician is, how much time they spend, how much they hold your hand and hug you and cry with you. They have a fraction of the interest that you do in your own health. I mean, like I said, and because you live with it every day, you live in that body. You got to live with it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you have to, you have to be really educated. You have to educate yourself. I mean, you should be an expert on your own body. You shouldn't outsource it to anybody else. And so, but part of the problem is, and I'll say this is particularly when people are sick, um, doing your own self-experimentation, which I'm certainly in favor of, can sometimes backfire and have negative consequences, even sometimes disastrous consequences. Like I'll just use an example, like a diabetic that's on, say, insulin or something like that. And they just say, hey, I'm going to go on a carnivore diet, and they keep dosing the same, right? And they don't know better. Most of them do, but some of them don't. They just keep dosing the same medications. They could precipitate a hypoglycemic coma, and end up in ER, maybe dead. So, I mean, that's why it's nice to have someone with some medical expertise, i.e. like Rivero or some of the other companies that are out there, that can provide some of that feedback and guide you in a way that's safe medically. If you don't have any health problems and you're pretty healthy going carnivore, you're unlikely to probably have any kind of issues. But I mean, the people that are kind of sick, even some of the mental health drugs can be really problematic if they're discontinued in a kind of a willy-nilly fashion. You can have all kinds of problems with that. So there is reason to include a physician for some of this stuff, for even for deprescription.
Right. So on the Rivero front, what can folks do? You have like a waiting list right now if they're interested in learning more.
Yeah, we've got a waiting list. I will, like I said, we should start seeing our very first few patients within a couple of weeks. Our waiting list we put out, I don't know, a month ago. We got over 1,000 people on it already. So it's a very good, strong signal that people are interested in this. And so what we'll do, we have physicians licensed in all 50 states. So we'll be able to see everybody in the U.S. and then maybe eventually we get to expand overseas. But our initial folks we're going to be seeing are going to be mostly cardiometabolic type issues. So it's going to be, diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, obesity. That will be our initial cohort of people, because there's already some groundwork, like Verta Health and some other companies have done a little bit of groundwork in that. So we feel a little safer treading down that path as far. And then soon as we sort of kind of get rolling where we're, because like anytime you start something new, there's going to be some iterations. We're going to get some feedback. Hey, that's not working like it's supposed to. Okay, we got to adjust things, right? So we know that's going to happen. So we're going to open up to a very small number of patients, maybe 10 patients to start with, see how things are going, run with that for, a few weeks or a month, and then make sure we have everything where we like it. And then we open it up broader, starting with, the metabolic stuff. And then from there, we'll likely do autoimmune. And then from there, even mental health and anything that digital health can be, anything that can be done through digital health reasonably and safely, we'll do. Somebody breaks their arm, that you don't come to Rivero for a broken arm. You go to, like I said, everything's going to be digital. So you can just imagine if you're having, somebody, somebody stabs you in the back, hey, don't go on the phone and dial up Rivero, or on a computer, use your app. You'll go to the ER. So yeah, that's sort of the game plan here. So we're just literally weeks away. I mean, it's, we're just, everything's like, and I keep talking to my partner, who's the technical officer. She's a data engineer, Silicon Valley entrepreneur, got a whole team of software engineers. I'm like, okay, you guys, when's it going to be? And they're like, oh, we think we're going to do it in July. All right, I'll tell everybody July. No, wait, we got to move it back. Yeah, so I keep hearing it, but I know we're very, very close right now. So that's why we opened the waiting list, and it should be like hopefully within a few weeks. So
that's wonderful. I'm excited for that. I really am, because that's, like I said, that's been the biggest life-changing thing for me on Carnivore, is all the medication that I didn't need to take when it was just nutrition. I know a lot of people in my community too that are following are excited for that as well. Another question I had for you is, so you've been doing Carnivore for a long time now. What does it look like from your perspective? I get this feeling, it's like, I started Carnivore 6 months ago, and now my mom is doing it. My stepdad's doing it. Both of my sisters are doing it. Two of my daughters are doing it. And it's just like, this ripple effect. It seems like I'm so close to it, so it's hard for me to say, but does it seem like carnivore is growing in general from your perspective?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, I can just see it on social media. I mean, every time I put a little post, like anything, like remotely related to carnivore, which is a lot of what I talk about, obviously. I mean, the number of people that are responding with, either comments or experiences, good or bad, mostly good, is, I mean, it's gone up orders of magnitude from when I started. So I know that this has reached many, probably hundreds of thousands, if not, maybe a million or more people at this point. I mean, it's growing and it grows every day. And and like I said, I think the reason it's growing is because it works. I mean, that's
Mhm.
as simple as this. The only reason it's growing because think about it, on its face, who the hell would want to do it? I mean, it's not very, kind of boring. It's like, you're quote unquote killing the planet, you're going to get heart disease. Why would somebody voluntarily do that? Right. I mean, what would be the reason for that? Well, the only reason really that really makes sense is they actually are getting healthier. They're actually getting better. And, because there's no other redeeming qualities for it. I mean, you can I can debunk all those criticisms, I think pretty nicely, but most people's perception of all you eat is meat. What's the first thing they tell you? Oh my God, what's your cholesterol? When are you gonna have a heart attack? Or they're like, oh my God, you're killing the planet. I mean, so the general perception in society is this is a bad thing. You shouldn't do it. And yet everybody's doing it and getting healthy. And it's not like, well, I mean, I guess you could say, well, there's people that are drunk and drink, and they know that's bad for it. It's people that shoot up heroin, there's a lot of them. So, but I mean, none of us are doing that for like, to get high, right? I mean,
Right.
we're doing it just because we're sick and we're trying to get healthy, and it works. And that's the only reason it's growing, because it works quite well. I think honestly, I mean, I say this, um, in all seriousness, this is probably one of the most effective medical interventions that I've ever seen, bar none. I mean, no, there's no drug that I think comes close to it. There's no surgical procedure that comes close to it. I think again, it doesn't fix everything for everybody, and not everybody needs to do it, but it is a friggin' powerful tool for sure. And I mean, to sit there and, the people that are like, no one should ever try it. Oh my God, you should never try the, like, you get these, obviously paid for dietitians, industry sponsored dietitians saying, well, here's 10 reasons why you should never do the carnivore diet. Don't even open that bottle, because if you open that if you open the toothpaste tube, you can't put it back in. So don't even do it. Right. Because they don't want people to find out that, wait a minute, I don't need all this extra garbage. I don't need all these supplements and all these pills and, all this complicated nutritional scheming, I'm balancing my food and balanced diet. How the hell do you do that? I mean, it's just like, what do you mean by balanced diet? I always laugh when somebody says, well, you need a balanced diet. I said, I do. I got ribeye on my left hand, a ribeye on my right hand. Good and balanced. What else do I need? Anyway.
Right. It's funny you said on the getting high part. I did a video a while ago where I said I got a steak high because every now and then I'll eat a big fatty ribeye. I'm like, oh man, that feels so good. But it is remarkable. I know it's anecdotal, but I've encountered so many people through my YouTube channel and now doing this carnivore diet documentary. We've had just countless people sharing their stories. It's remarkable. And it's anecdotal, I know, but my family that I mentioned, my mom, my stepdad, my sisters, every single one of them that does it, it's just the same thing over and over again. It's just incredible results. I feel better. My depression's gone. I had this brain fog. It went away. I'm sleeping better over and over and over again. I've had a bunch of people tell me early on in carnivore, you would have done the same thing, Carrie, if you just ate vegetables. It's because you got rid of the sugar and the junk. What do you say to people like that?
Well, I think, like I said, for some people, there's some truth to that, right? I mean, if your diet is pure, just garbage, yeah, getting rid of all that stuff and eating whole foods is a good idea, and it would probably solve some issues. However, I have a lot of people that have already done that. Most people don't just go from straight garbage to carnivore. At least they didn't in the past. Maybe now more do it because they've heard so much good things about it. But I mean, I've seen people that literally have been on a paleo diet, have been on a whole food vegan diet. They've been on a Mediterranean diet with no processed food, no sugar, no junk. And yet when they go carnivore, their health improved over that. So, I mean, yes, for some people, sure. Quite honestly, that's a good way to start. Cut out the processed food. I mean, I think if everybody did that, we would probably reduce our chronic disease burden probably 50%. I mean, just by doing that. Now, the problem is, two problems with that is, one is it doesn't work by itself. Some people need to go farther. And the other thing is, it's really, really, really hard to stop eating that addictive junk food. It's just hard. And unless you replace it with something that is so nutrient packed and satiating and viscerally satisfying, like meat is, or at least it is for me and many other people, then it's very easy to fall back in it. Because you're like, oh, I'm gonna have a little lean piece of fish and a salad, and maybe I'll have a couple walnuts, and maybe I'll have a sparkling water. If that's your diet, yeah, you're gonna lose weight on that, and you're gonna feel better. But guess what? You're gonna do that about 3 months, or not even 3 months, by 3 weeks, and you're like, F this stuff. Give me a piece, give me a bowl of ice cream, right? I mean, that's what you see. It's not sustainable for most people. So irrespective if it would help. And again, of course, there's people that are sensitive, and I know vegetables are considered like the most ideal form of food. A lot of people think that, but I mean, a lot of people literally don't tolerate them that well for whatever reason. Maybe their gut's been messed up through years of abusing it through, standard American garbage. And now their gut just doesn't work correctly. And they just can't tolerate these high fiber foods with the various, compounds in there that can be problematic for some people. And again, there's people that tolerate it fine. Obviously there's people that are healthy that eat vegetables. I mean, that's clear, but there is a significant segment of the population where it doesn't seem to work well. So anyway, that's kind of a response.
Yeah. So my daughter was vegan for 5 years, and she went carnivore. She couldn't sustain being vegan. She was hungry. She was tired. She was fatigued. She had acne, hormonal issues, all sorts of stuff that all regulated on it. I always tell people that say that to me that you would have been fine on vegetables. I'm like, where are all these vegan videos we're seeing of people reversing depression, anxiety, type 2 diabetes? I don't see any of these videos out there. It seems like some people have a little bit of short-term success, but not sustaining it.
I think there's some that do, to be fair, but I mean, I don't think it's to the extent that what we're seeing here, and not to the degree. I mean, even the mastering of diabetes, the type 1 diabetics that are talking about their super low fat, pure vegan diet. I mean, they're happy with a hemoglobin A1C of 6.5, which is still diabetic range. And they're just like, well, I use less insulin. I can eat more carbs. But it's like, we got people with their type 1 diabetics that have, A1C of 4.6, so it's like the level of improvement is not the same in my experience.
Right. One other question I had for you was, one sort of remarkable thing I've been seeing a lot of, early on. I did a video with an elderly gentleman doing carnivore. He's 71 years old, and he's just thriving. And ever since I did that video, I've been getting so many comments from people in their 60s, 70s, 80s that are just killing it on carnivore. They're just thriving. Has this been something that you've noticed too? It just seems so weird to me. I would think in my older age, I wouldn't be ready to change my diet and just start eating meat only, but it seems like I'm seeing it a lot more.
Well, I mean, I can see why they're thriving, because, by the time you get through 5, 6, 7 decades of life and all the accumulation of disease has occurred, you notice it a lot more. So when you no longer are exposed to all those negative environmental nutritional factors, the relative change is huge. I mean, you go from somebody that's like 70 and about on their deathbed, they're like, life sucks. I mean, everything hurts. I didn't want to get out of bed. It's just like, I have no energy, to, wow, I feel relatively normal. I mean, it's like 30 years have been lifted off your back, if you do it. But if you take a 22-year-old, I mean, how much better is he going to get? I mean, he hasn't really accumulated the mileage yet. So, I mean, we see that. And, initially it was like, how old can people be? And I'm aware of people in their 80s and 90s that have done this for sure, that are doing well. Some of the concerns are around, well, I don't even have any teeth anymore. These old people, their teeth are all destroyed, and, it's hard for them to chew steaks and stuff like that. So it's like, do they have the digestive capacity? They have enough stomach acid left? Because a lot of people lose the ability to produce stomach acid as they get older. So there's some definite additional challenges when you're really old. But I think the relative rewards are maybe even higher for that cohort, because, most of the people in my community, my carnivore diet community, are 40 plus. I don't have a lot of 18-year-olds running around in there, because they're just like, they're bulletproof at 18. You're like, you can whatever. You can stay all night drinking, eating junk food, and pop up the next day, and you're like, okay, I'm good. Fast forward 20, 30 years, and that ain't happening anymore. So,
Right.
so you get these people who are like, I just don't want to hurt every day. I just don't want to wake up every day miserable. And so So yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. And I mean, it would be, I mean, if we look at like lifespan in population, people have always lived, to 80. I mean, that's even going back as far as the ancient Greeks, and even some of the Paleolithic groups. We know some of the hunter gatherers, some of the ancient some of those bones, we've seen bones that are in the seventh, eighth decade. So that occurs. But what happened was, now, before, a lot of people used to die young. I mean, they would die of particularly infectious diseases. Sanitation was an issue. Clean water, and antibiotics have helped tremendously in many cases. So now, we used to have, like, like they would say, what's the life expectancy at birth? Well, it's 40. Well, because half of you guys are going to die before you're 3, right? So, I mean, it's like, okay, so you're not going to, but there's still a lot of people making it old. Today, we get a lot more people making it old. We get a lot of people, like when you're born, like, I expect to live to, whatever, 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, that's my expectation, because I'm not seeing everybody around me dropping dead. Like if it was in 1850, I mean, you know, half you might have had 3 kids that died in childhood, and everybody else is dropping dead. So now we're living longer. And, the question is, how do you prolong the quality of life? Right. Because that's because, if you're going to live longer, and we can, modern, conveniences, having the fact that you can sleep in an air conditioned home, you're not getting eaten by a bear because you're not camping out in a tent or whatever. You're going to live longer. And so the question is, how do you enjoy that? Because that's what I always talk about, is quality of life is so much more important, assuming you're going to live longer anyway, but now you got to make sure it's a decent quality of life. And that's where I think this has such an important impact.
Yeah. I love hearing those comments from people too, because my goodness, if you work your entire life, it seems like everyone is worried about aging and, not working their whole life and then retiring to just sit with a walker and be crunched over. So it's always great reading those comments. It seems like I've been getting a lot more lately. I have another question for you. I reached out to my community members here, and they sent me a whole bunch of questions, and this thing keeps coming up on YouTube lately. The question is, are you concerned about YouTube censorship affecting the spread of information about the carnivore diet?
In a word, yes, absolutely. I think I am. I mean, you saw, was it Eric Berg just said he was largely, not quite deplatformed, but, and they talk about this. We're not, because it's like, well, free speech. We don't, we don't want to have a limitation on speech, but we want to limit your reach. So they may say, oh, you can put all the videos you want. We won't shut you down, but only 6 people are going to watch it, so you'll see your numbers go down. So the message does not get through. And so, I mean, obviously there's alternative platforms. I mean, a lot of people are going over to Rumble, which, I mean, I think their policies are good as far as they allow, kind of unfettered speech, which I think is great. But there's not that many people there. So it's like, well, you're still kind of limiting yourself. Twitter, which is now X, has a little bit better of a, I guess, policy. But what I think, here's what I tell people, and I had actually did a video about this the other day. How can you prevent that? If you are concerned about it's important to you, you then have to support the people that are on the platform. You have to make them successful. How do you do that? Well, you share their videos, you comment on their videos, you like their videos, you watch the stupid ads, because this is, I mean, YouTube, all they care about is money, right? They just want money, right? And if you are a channel that's making them a lot of money through advertising or whatever way, they're going to continue to kind of make things easier for you. So that's what I tell people. Just when you click on one of my videos, just, put the ad on in the background, turn the phone upside down, go walk around, brush your teeth, whatever, then come back and then watch the real stuff. Because, half the time they send a freaking Beyond Meat ad, it's always a lot.
Yeah.
It's comical. So I think there's things we can do. We have a lot of power as a community, as consumers, the market forces, we can pick the winners and losers. So if we consistently say, hey, we want this guy to succeed, we're going to watch his stuff, or we're going to support him. We're going to hold our nose and watch the ads, or, or let them play in the background, whatever, however we do that. That at least sends a signal, and if they don't, and again, if they don't listen to that signal, then people just leave, they go somewhere else. I'm going to go over to, like I said, hopefully, I mean, gosh, I mean, it's, pharmaceutical industry is so powerful. I mean, they've got so much money. You're talking multi-trillions of dollars at their disposal. They're, they lobby, they own the politicians, they own the media. You know, it's like, you know, it's a tough thing to do. But I mean, ultimately, even those guys are um, held sort of captive to money. How much money can they generate, right? And what I think is that, you know, and somebody's got to get them. It's a zero sum game. If these guys lose money, somebody else gets some money, right? And so what you want to do is you pick the winners, like pick the people, like, you know, like I said, support a local rancher, support maybe a healthcare company that's doing the right thing, support, you know, like I got a friend of mine. There's a restaurant called Hop Dottie. It's a burger joint, right? And Matt Schweitzer, good friend of mine, he's the vice president for culinary whatever. He basically sources their food, and he recently has like, we're getting rid of, they had Beyond Meat on the menu and something like that. And he said, we just got rid of that. I said, the hell with that. I'm getting rid of that stuff. So I got rid of that and replaced it with a bunch of regenerative raised meat. So these, you know, like I said, I hope that people will go out there and support these types of group, because, you know, like I said, it's not, you know, it's not impossible, but it is going to take, you know, millions of people can defeat a, you know, nefarious company. You know, I know you can, because it's been done in the past. I mean, we see it all the time. It may take some time, and there may be some, you know, there's going to be some casualties along the way. I mean, you know, there's people that, you know, maybe lose their channels or lose their voice, but it's still worth the fight. You know, and I think it's incredibly important. Like, you know, when you go around to shop your movie around, you know, you're probably going to run into some resistance. You know, they're like, well, Netflix going to be like, nah, no, we want to show Blue Zones. We want to show vegan diet. We want to show Game Changers, right? Because that's who their sponsors are, right? That's who's making the money. So you're going to run into that. And how do you overcome that? Well, the network of us people, you know, like say, hey, we're going to promote it on, you know, maybe it premieres on Twitter or something like that. Or maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, I don't know you know, I mean, you'll have to figure that out, but where there's a will, there's a way. And, you know, I think the truth will prevail, and I think goodness will overcome evil. I mean, I know maybe I'm a little Pollyannish about that, but I think, you know, if you don't have that belief, or you're just pessimistic, if you're Eeyore, you remember Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh? Oh yeah, man, another day. F that. I mean, you know, you just not, I mean, what's the point of living then if that's the case? So, I mean, and it's kind of fun to fight, you know, it is kind of fun to be on that. And sometimes it's fun to be the underdog too, because we are. Anyway.
Yes. Yeah, we're the outcasts, we're the underdogs, but there's a whole heck of a lot of us, and it's growing quick. It's just an army of people out there, and they're fired up about carnivore. So
yeah,
I'm excited about it. I really enjoyed talking with you, Dr. Baker. Thank you so much for your time. I got to shout you out too. I love your Instagram too, by the way. I'll have a link for that in the description below. It's kind of fun because there's always so much serious stuff with carnivore, but mixing things up every now and then, it's a lot of fun. So
yeah, I think you have to entertain. It's got to be a little entertaining, and I try to do that. Sometimes it's goofy, funny stuff. Some people get mad about it, but, you know, hey, you can't please everybody. You know, if you try to please everybody, you please no one. So anyway,
right. Yeah, so we're shouting you out at you've got carnivore.diet and rivero.com and your Instagram. Is there anything else you wanted to shout out before we wrap up?
Well, I've got a YouTube channel too. So I mean, if you want to check out my YouTube channel, just Shawn Baker MD. I mean, just like it says on the screen here. So Shawn Baker MD. That's good. Like I said, I'm trying to, you know, like I said, I think if we just grow this movement as big as possible, so everybody just hopefully support each other and help everybody grow their channels, grow their social medias, grow their companies, so that we have a good, firm, you know, footing to fight from.
Absolutely. Yep. Love it. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Baker. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll sign off from there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man.